Joining us now, Sid Salter, political analyst. He's also the Chief Communication Officer and Director of the Office of Public Affairs at Mississippi State University. Always good to be with you, Sid. How are you today, sir?
I'm well, Gerard. Good to be with you as well.
So, a couple of weeks ago, we discussed here on the program this concept of both-siderism in journalism, which seems to have left the room. And in fact, some journalists are even suggesting that shouldn't even be a precept of journalism anymore, that almost to some extent, journalism and I guess news reporting has morphed into more opinion columns and so forth. Your thoughts about that?
Well, I've been doing opinion columns for a long time. And, the thing about that, it's clearly marked to the reader as content that is opinion based. Once an hour or so on SuperTalk, you take out 5 minutes and report the news to people. And then you go on with the programming, which is heavily opinion based. Same thing in print journalism. There's an editorial page that's clearly marked as opinion. If it's on the front page or the rest of the paper, it's supposed to be news, and news comes with balance and context. And so both-siderism purports that the journalist should make the decision over what is good or bad or just or unjust, and only report the just with very little or no context, because they say that, it's so clear that both sides of a question, in some cases, both sides aren't equal and shouldn't be reported equally. Well, I guess I'm kind of a dinosaur. The training I had in journalism was that you equip your readers or listeners or viewers with the information from both sides of an argument. You gave them context, and in news reporting, you provide the information to that consumer of news and allow them to have the information necessary to make their own judgment about what is a valid point. And so, Gerard, I think there's a huge blurring of the line between advocacy and journalism. Advocacy, if you want to be an advocate for one position or another, one party or another, one philosophy or another, have at it. But if you're going to put on the cloak of journalism, I would argue that you have a responsibility to report both sides and to trust the reader or the ultimate consumer of news to take that factual information and make a decision.
Yeah, and Sid, it seems to me like it kind of boils down to this concept that we hear that produces lots of criticism and complaints, that in our education institutions, even at young ages, that students are being taught what to think rather than how to think. And to some extent, that seems to have, I guess, infiltrated journalism, where the author of even news pieces has somewhat of an opinion, and it just seems like they try to weave that in there without maybe directly saying it. I consume, for the purposes of the show, I consume lots of news from papers, all digital, of course, from across the country. And you'll have the same story reported by two different papers. Even the headlines just kind of project it in just completely counter terms for the same story, same facts. And it's just based on the source.
Well, I think that's another facet of the whole both-siderism argument. The evolution of the news business, of journalism, in the U.S., and I would argue across the globe, has been one that people are gravitating toward sort of designer news. If they're conservative to Fox, if they're liberal to MSNBC, mushy middle CNN, although it's become more liberal of late. And so people are tuning in, particularly in the broadcast side, to finding the news they want to hear rather than the news. When I was young, you had Walter Cronkite and Huntley Brinkley and these sort of titanic figures who just kind of like Joe Friday on Dragnet gave you just the facts. There might be some slight differentiation, but the general facts were contained, and they weren't selling you. I remember very well when Cronkite said on the evening news that the Vietnam War did not appear to be something that the United States would win. That set off shockwaves because, Uncle Walter gave an opinion, and it was like, oh, good gracious, what's happened? And so there has been a tremendous transition between what I call straight news reporting and advocacy. And I've heard the arguments from both sides. I got friends in the business who tout that argument. I still, and again, admittedly a dinosaur, I still think reporting both sides of a story, even if one side has some, sometimes awful context, I think there is a responsibility to trust the reader, the viewer, with receiving that information in context and making their own wise choice moving forward.
Sid, one thing that the digital world has done is it gives everybody effectively an easy platform to become their own media source, if you will, their own media operation. And it seems like that information gets transferred around at warp speed. And where I'm going with this is, does it seem like that sometimes reporters are so anxious to, I guess, make a point that they often rush to a conclusion without fully vetting it, and that gets in print or it gets on video or whatever form, and it just runs with it, and then at some point later sorry, we got that wrong. It seems like that happens more than it used to.
I do think online news reporting, digital news reporting, there is a tremendous impetus to be first rather than a tremendous impetus to be right. And so I think that happens very frequently. I also think that, again, to the concept of sort of designer news, to compete, tweets are rolling nonstop. And so to compete, there has to be a certain amount of sensationalism in that to attract eyeballs, and there are figures who do that as well.
Yeah, it just seems like that we end up compromising the truth for that. Just because, as you said, to be first, to get out there, and of course, clicks equal money as well. So there's some degree of that in play.
Yes, and the polarization of the country right now. I lived through Vietnam, Watergate, all these things, but I don't believe I've ever seen the country more divided and more passionately divided than they are at this time. And I wonder, looking back over the figures that represented Mississippi in Congress and those who enjoyed long, influential friendships with past presidents, I wonder what they would make of Washington today and the lack of any desire to reach across the aisle and to practice what we used to call statesmanship, to realize nobody's going to get everything they want in a political debate, and that it's about compromise in context, and that's really gotten lost in the show.
Yeah. Great analysis as always, Sid. Thanks so much for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon, man.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it. Middays, we'll take a break right here. We'll come right back. Don't forget, we got some tickets to give away again foreigner again, right, Rhino? Yeah. We'll be right back. Stay with us.